Hello, I'm Sasha of Sasha Makes Cards, and today I'm here with Whimsy Stamps showing off this underwater sea shaker themed card I created using the Baby Sea Creatures stamp set, the Slimline Connect-It Bubbles die, and then these 2 packs of embellishments from This Calls for Confetti, which are also available on the Whimsy Stamps website, called Glazed Blueberry Sequin Confetti and the Clear Dewdrops. I started by stamping a few of the images from the stamp set onto a 100-pound Hammermill cardstock, which is a cardstock that is great for coloring with alcohol markers, using the Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink. I simply placed the stamps in my stamp positioning tool, picked them up, stamped them onto my cardstock, and I was ready to go. Since I'm going to be making a slimline card, I decided to stamp most of the images from the stamp set so that I could nicely space them all out and fill a lot of space on the card. If you're using a stamp for the first time, it's always best to condition your stamps. I do this by rubbing my palm against the stamp set. However, there are other methods to doing this, such as an eraser or just stamping the image over and over until it's conditioned. Conditioning your stamps helps to make sure that you get a perfect, clean, crisp image every single time. Once all of the images were stamped, I then fussy cut them to get them ready for coloring. Today I'm going to be coloring the images using a blue and orange color palette using my Ohuhu alcohol markers. Here I have the color combinations that I am going to be using up on the screen. Feel free to screenshot it and refer back to it if you would like. As always, I'm starting with my darkest color working to my lightest color. For the orange, I'm going from YR180 to YR3 to Y10 and then to Y4. For the blue color combination, I'm going from B080 to B070 to B050 and then lastly to B030. Once I'm happy with my coloring using the alcohol markers, I then go in with my Prismacolor Premier pencil crayons to add some more shading and color to the images. Once I was done coloring the images, I could then move on to creating the background. Since I'm making an underwater themed shaker card, I decided to create an water themed background using ink smushing technique. The inks I used were Faded Jeans Distress Oxide, Salty Ocean Distress Oxide, and the Royal Positively Saturated ink from Simon Says Stamp. To do the ink smushing, I used my glass craft mat, placed some of the ink on the mat, added some water using my spray bottle, and picked it up onto the paper. I did this as many times as I wanted until I got my desired results, using a heat gun to dry the layers in between. I love playing around with the ink smushing technique because you can create some really fun backgrounds for a wide variety of cards, and I especially love it for creating underwater themed cards such as this one because it creates just this super fun, organic, watery type background. Before moving on to the die cutting, I decided I also wanted to splatter my background, so I used a bleed-proof white ink and splattered it using a fan brush. Now that the background's all ready, I can now die cut the die from the background. I taped the Slimline Connect-It Bubbles die onto the underwater background I created using some washi tape just to hold it in place, and then ran it through my die cutting machine. To create the actual shaker itself, I cut a piece of acetate to the size of a slimline card, which is 3.5 by 8.5 inches, and glued it onto the large cutout background. I then glued the bubble die cut on top of the acetate to create this cool window effect. I decided to glue the images on before I made the shaker card. I could have done it after too. I ended up gluing some more elements on after, but I figured out the placement of the images and glued them on using the same liquid adhesive as I always use, Barely Art glue onto the card front. To create the actual shaker itself, I started by placing foam tape on the back of the card front, cutting some in half to make sure I create a border going all around the card front to completely enclose the embellishments. I then add some embossing powder to the edges of the foam tape to try and help the embellishments not to stick to the foam tape once it's enclosed. And then I place the embellishments on the card itself, the Slimline card, peel off the foam tape and place the card front onto the card. To finish off the card, I then glued on a sentiment that I stamped off camera. I decided to stamp the Seize the Day sentiment, glued that on, and some extra embellishments from the clear dewdrops set to act as little bubbles. And that is the completed shaker card. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to check out the description box below for a list of the Whimsy Stamps products I used to create this card, with links to shop if your heart so desires, and links to both my social media and the Whimsy Stamps social media. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.